How do you go about writing a life story?
The true things rarely get into circulation. Usually the false things.
After you got what you want, did you want it?
Well,
The true things rarely get into circulation. Usually the false things.
The power of Netflix budgets, mixed with the passion of people working on a topic they care about, has unearthed some of the most enlightening expositions of our time. Netflix has created some incredibly influential documentaries over the last few years. There have been documentaries that change the way we think about the world, documentaries that make us reflect on ourselves. And some of the best documentaries don't say much at all. Some subjects come with societal expectations, while others come with a grain of interest, only to end up shoving giant loaves of bread down our throats by the credits. And then there's this flaming pile of shit. This fucking piece of flaming pile of garbage trash. So this most garbage in the history of When I saw the trailer, I instantly knew that it was going to be very bad. I mean, they don't even use Marilyn Monroe's voice to sing I Wanna Be Loved by You.
I wanna be loved by you.
I wanna be loved by you. Love.
I kind of went into this expecting it to be shit, and I was really trying to just absorb myself of all expectations so that maybe I could watch it and be surprised and be entertained and learn something new about Marilyn Monroe. But no.
In 1982,
Los Angeles reopened the case of Marilyn Monroe's death.
After 20 years, it's time to clear up this case once and for all.
the interviews have never been heard until now.
I can't say anything, and I knew it all.
And I indeed found out things which had not been found out before.
So none of the tapes in this documentary are of Marilyn or people who directly knew Marilyn. After watching this documentary, if I were to recreate the trailer based on the movie, did you know Marilyn Monroe kissed president? Did you know Marilyn Monroe said? Did you know Marilyn K-worded herself? Yep, case closed. Oh, and we also have an exclusive interview of someone who owns the ambulance company that Marilyn Monroe drove in. Not the driver. Just the guy who owns the company. And who knew the driver. From bad drone shots to victim blaming and awful reenactments that aren't consistent with the characters they're trying to portray, this 2-hour-long feature film that could have been directed by Perez Hilton himself aims to leave you with just as much information as you started with. So for some reason it opens with these drone shots of Ireland. Not really sure why. Marilyn loved leprechauns. Then we meet Anthony Summers. Basically, he is this guy who wrote Goddess, a book about Marilyn Monroe. And in it, he interviewed a bunch of people who knew Marilyn. It's like once removed interviews from people who barely knew her. I think at one point they have an interview with the son of Marilyn's psychiatrist.
I hated Hollywood. And found the whole thing to be obnoxious. People were phony and narcissistic characters. I hated them. So when I heard that Dad was singing Marilyn, I was not jumping up and down and cheering. He couldn't see her at the office. She was too goddamn famous. He was seeing her at home. Thought, what a bunch of bullshit.
Just like to give you a picture of the people who are in this, like that's the closest person to know Marilyn was like the son of her psychiatrist.
You knew Monroe at the beginning.
Well, my husband knew her.
The documentary essentially opens with recreations of phone calls.
In fact, during Princeton Showgirls, she said when it's over, she's going to go home.
Did she ever talk to you about her desire for children?
If you gave her a choice between children and stardom, it would have been children.
First off, we jump right into it. Marilyn's in the Black Book of Sluts. That's what this movie opens with.
You got one thing I'll guarantee you which you didn't know about. In this business, in the golden years, every casting director of every studio used to have a black book. You know what I mean? So every girl, you know, I'm talking about kids that were breaking in like Marilyn Monroe, you know, when they get started. All the casting directors, they would write in their black book who could be laid.
Yeah.
You see, the business has changed since then. Today it's the buck.
Right.
It used to be sex. Remember that.
You know the stories about Skank and her. They were true, were they?
Oh, sure. Skank was a human being. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She had a bunch of them. He wasn't the only one.
We're a group who gathered at Skank's. She was always very much at his house.
Yeah.
Anyone can see I love you.
By night, he escorted her to the top people in town.
I'm not kidding, y'all. This movie is so bad. Like, if you didn't know before entering this channel, Misguided Merman, an ode to Marilyn Monroe, I am a huge fan of Marilyn. I wouldn't even consider it being a fan. I just like... I love her. I discovered Marilyn's story when I was super depressed, and I was really curious about this star who had successfully K-worded herself. It didn't take much reading to really learn about how crazy her life was and how many conspiracies there were surrounding her death. I mean, it was literally claimed a probable suicide rather than just immediately declared a suicide. That's the first thing, and then from there it just goes on and on. The biggest thing that is revealed, quote unquote, in this documentary is that the person who owns the ambulance company apparently says that Marilyn was driven to a hospital, she died on the way, and then was driven back to her house, laid down, and then like the psychiatrist was called, the press was called, all those things. But that's literally like it. The rest of this documentary literally just spends time reiterating the tabloid headlines that Marilyn dealt with her entire life. They don't use any new Marilyn footage. They don't cite the interviews or put like, oh, so-and-so is talking, like this is a recreation of this person, because the recreations of the phone calls are not like cohesive to the voice recording. And then they used clips of her songs from her characters in her movies, like Everybody Needs a Daddy, to insinuate or back up the claims that Marilyn Monroe was a hussy.
She was always very much at his house.
Yeah.
Anyone can see I love you.
At one point, they even go as far to claim that she has no training.
She had no technique.
But then Jane Russell comes in, she does a nice interview.
She was very bright, and she
wanted to learn and was interested in everything. And every night after work, she would go to the coach. But after a day's work, she'd go to the coach. But she wanted to be good. Then when the camera went on, it was like the whole electric light went on in the, you know.
Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe worked together on Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Gentlemen friends, they never did see. They came to the wrong side of the tracks.
They barely talk about her childhood at all. They just skim right on past her childhood. They're like, this girl is a crazy hussy. How did she become such a hussy? She wants all of this love and affection, but why? Also, she was in 9 orphanages. Anyways, okay, so we really love her tits.
The orphan girl rejections.
Like, that's essentially this documentary. This documentary is probably like everything that Kim Kardashian knows about Marilyn Monroe. This movie took a turn from laughable to disgusting for me when they talk about when Marilyn Monroe was molested at a young age and then instantly cut to a quote of her saying that she liked it.
Marilyn said, "It did happen. I knew it was wrong. But to tell you the truth, I think I was more curious than anything else. Nobody ever told me about sex. And frankly, I never did think it was all that important."
So yeah, Netflix, that's great. That's a great message to send to people that she was asking for it. That's the message you're sending to everybody who watches this. Cool. Love that it's a breakthrough documentary. Then they showed this weird train for some reason. I don't know why. Apparently insinuating that Marilyn was also fucking Thomas the Tank Engine. I don't know. Like, skimmed over her discussing like nuclear codes with someone. They like talk about it for like a second and then they're like, anyways.
Which the Kennedys said, shit, she can make public that we've been discussing nuclear matters at this critical time.
Boobs. It's like literally any glimpse of empathy that this documentary could have. It's just like, this documentary sees her strictly through the eye of the tabloids. It is, I'm tired. The documentary confirms that Marilyn was bugged and her house had wires all over it. And there's an interview with some of the people who did the wiring, apparently.
The Hoffa wanted was me to develop a derogatory profile on Jack and Bobby Kennedy and their relationships with Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And the strategy that was agreed upon was to use electronic devices.
Like, shouldn't this guy be in jail? What? And then at the end, they just used Marilyn's own words against her, saying that the truth rarely gets circulated.
Somewhere like that. Quite closely related to her death.
The question was whether she died in the ambulance.
They took her to St. John's,
To St. John's Hospital. Just recap on it for me.
and that she died in the ambulance. And they took her back to the house. That was what he told me.
She died on the way, and the ambulance was turned around and brought her body back.
Right.
Right.
I would like to be a good actress.
And it's over. It's over. That's it. It's gross and awful, and I hated it. So apparently this documentary was made by Emma Cooper, who is a Brit who worked with Anthony Summers on the Madeleine McCann documentary that Netflix did. Anthony then said, hey, you really got to read my book that came out in 1982. And Emma Cooper is quoted saying, oh, I really don't want to read this. And then she did, and she was like, wow, that's crazy. I'll make a movie about it. And then she did.
Does it matter that I'm a Brit? Probably not. But I had actually never seen any of her films. So she was very one-dimensional to me, which was quite helpful, that I came with no baggage. And I read Tony's book and I thought, oh, there's things in here that I don't know. And I think that's really interesting. Tony and I had worked together before. We made another Netflix series about the disappearance of a little girl called Marilyn McCann. And in the process of that, Tony was very keen that I read all his back catalogue, which they're very big books. And so he said, you've got to read this book about Marilyn Monroe that I made in 1982. So I thought, oh, okay. And I did end up reading it. And so I was intrigued and I spoke to him, and then he said, I recorded all my interviews. So the editor was actually saying to me, he said to me such a interesting point. He said, the film is like a seance and it's bringing the ghosts back of all the people who knew her and all the people who sat in a room with her and know what it's like to be in a room with Marilyn Monroe. It can really answer the question of, is she an enigma? What is it about her? And then maybe our society gives them more of a mystery than maybe their death should actually have.
It really seems like she only read this one book about Marilyn. Because there's no other sides to it. Anthony at the end of the movie says that he thinks Marilyn killed herself, and Emma Cooper delivers it in the movie as if it's fact. This guy, knew a bunch of people who knew Marilyn. Case closed. That's what Bailey Sarian said. It's over. She's just sad. I'm sorry, but what the actual fuck is going on this day? Like, these people get money to make these sorts of things that deliver no message. What could they have done that would have maybe actually been a good documentary, like a breakthrough documentary? They could have used actual interviews of Marilyn. They could have hired someone who cares. They could have not used someone who says that they know more about Prince Charles. Maybe Netflix could have not hired Emma Cooper for this project. That would have made a really good documentary, I think. Maybe, possibly. The director of Mystery of Marilyn Monroe, The Unheard tapes, admits that she never understood the mystique surrounding Marilyn Monroe before she began to work on the film. When she was approached by Anthony Summers, longtime Marilyn Monroe biographer who investigated her death, she never expected to spend 3 years of her life making a Monroe documentary. Maybe she should have spent another 3 years, unmaking it. Or, I don't know, doing something different. Emma Cooper, the director of this movie, literally said in interviews time and time again that she doesn't give a shit. She just doesn't fucking care about Marilyn at all. And she just basically did this documentary as a favor to Anthony Summers because he helped on the Madeleine McCann documentary or something. I don't understand why this was made. I don't understand why this was made. They don't even mention how she started her own production company, how she essentially created the paparazzi industry, how Marilyn was literally monumental in queer rights, black rights, fucking fashion, women's rights. Marilyn changed the world, and she was trying to be president. She wanted to be First Lady of the United States, and she was willing to kind of do whatever it took to get there. And I believe that she was taken out because of that. And in short, the director, Emma Cooper, her opinions go as far as to say that Marilyn Monroe would be really popular on Instagram. Yeah. That's who made this, is someone who thinks Marilyn would be super popular on Insta. That's it. That's all you need to know. And I wasn't the only one who thought this documentary was garbage. Seemed like Emma Cooper noticed that some of the reviews were in and they weren't so fond of her shitty documentary, so she started doing another round of press to try to hide the the bad reviews, because when I looked at her IMDb page, it shows terrible reviews for the Marilyn Monroe documentary all through April. And then as soon as May 2nd hits, the last 3 interviews, which IMDb only shows your last 3 interviews, are, wow, the rare tabloid expose that sets the record straight. Time for a pod talk. Emma Cooper on Netflix is The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe. If you scroll past those 3 articles, you'll see the reviews that I saw, which kind of fueled me into making this video, because I was like, well, I'm not alone. And someone called it repackaged SEO for the modern day, which I really liked the way they put that. You know, it's really fucked up when American Horror Story does a better job recapping Marilyn than an entire documentary.
I tell you, we have a treaty with aliens. And it's as if I've told you that we're repainting the Lincoln bedroom.
Well, I've always known something like this was happening.
You have?
When I was a little girl, I woke up in the middle of the night to this sound. There was this teddy bear. I didn't know where it came from. My foster parents never gave me any toys. When I told my foster mother, she didn't believe me and she told me I was crazy. And she sent me to another home. It wasn't a dream.
I actually really liked Marilyn Monroe in American Horror Story. I loved that little tidbit, and I loved how they said that she saw aliens, and that was why she went to so many foster homes. Like, that was just a beautiful addition to the lore. But this garbage documentary is just victim blaming. It is fully repeating a story that everyone knows, and then just hitting it over and over that she's a dirty slut. Like, they're just basically saying that over and over again. Awful. Like, I couldn't be more disgusted with this documentary, honestly. At least Lifetime spent the first 2 hours of their, 4-hour Marilyn biopic on covering her childhood and the hard parts of it. The documentary literally spent, a minute on covering Marilyn's life, early life. They didn't talk about when she was discovered. They didn't talk about her friends. They didn't talk about her... They didn't talk about her production company. They didn't talk about her last film. They didn't talk about how she was... So many things. I mean, just to show you a little, I mean, if you're going to make a slanderous documentary, make a slanderous documentary. Here are the FBI files of Marilyn Monroe. And apparently this claims that she was hooking up with a bunch of ladies. I mean, you could have made an entire documentary on this. All of the women that Marilyn was allegedly with. I mean, right here we got Natasha Lytreth, Judy Garland, Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, it's just her and Elizabeth Taylor right there. It says that she was hooking up with Betty Grable and Barbara Stanwyck. I mean, so many different rumors. If you want to make a slanderous documentary, at least be original. That's all I'm asking. There's just so much more to talk about. I mean, what's crazy is that the height of Marilyn Monroe's career was also the height of the starting of the paparazzi. There was once a time when Marilyn Monroe was the most photographed woman in the world. And Marilyn wasn't just a sexy person in the movies. She was a trained actress. One of her first films that she ever did was a horror movie called Don't Bother to Knock. In Don't Bother to Knock, Marilyn plays a deranged babysitter who tries to kill the kid because she wants to sleep with the dad. Marilyn went for these dramatic roles, and she was even in a few dramatic roles, but people act like she never did anything. She was just this slutty bombshell, and it was crazy how blonde and sexy she was. Blech. I would equate this documentary with the image of Marilyn Monroe, who's a skeleton. You know those artworks where it's Marilyn Monroe with half her face is a skeleton and she has tattoos? That's this documentary in a nutshell. liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Check out my coloring book. I have a coloring book on Amazon, and I also made a plant journal and a weed journal and a whole bunch of shit. I've been working on a bunch of other stuff behind the scenes, but now I am so happy to be getting back into making videos with you guys. So mwah, mwah. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for coming to watch my video. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and remember to always stay golden.